Namaste, everyone. Welcome to Sunday Night Alive, our new spiritual perspectives. My name is Reverend Denise Schubert. I will be your host this evening, and we are here to once again explore the idea of what we think and how we see the world makes a huge difference in how we experience the world we live in. So again, welcome to Sunday Night Alive, where tonight we're continuing our 3 weeks on the spiritual perspectives about movies. Tonight we're doing Cinderellas, Fairy Godmother, and the magic wand. So I'm excited about that. It's inspired me for many years. If you're here with me say hello, so I know you're here. Otherwise, I'm just talking to myself, which is not nearly as inspired as talking to you. So please do check in. I hope your day has been wonderful. I love Sundays. I love Sundays. I love Sunday nights. I love doing this on Sunday nights because it prepares us for the next week. We get to have a moment of breath, a moment of connection. Hi, Doug. Hi, Suki. We have a moment of creating a little bit of a spiritual community right here, right where I am and right where you are. I am streaming to you live from Naples, Florida, where I'm now living, very happily living, serving a community, the Unity of Naples community, which I am loving. And in fact, I'm actually speaking this coming Sunday. I'll do my first talk there since returning on, hi, Brian and Jem, on loving life out loud. So please do join. I'll give you the website at the end of tonight. So take a breath with me. I'm going to bless our time together. So we are talking about the magic wand. We're talking about how the magic wand is gifted to us through the story of Cinderella. In the same way, last week I talked about Batman, how Bruce Wayne found his identity through a very troubled past, which is a guidepost for how we can find our identity through a troubled past. And truly the idea is spiritual perspective. Like, how can we view life, our life, all of life, through a lens of spirituality or mysticism rather than a lens of the ego? Because when we can do that, we can turn every lemon into lemonade. When we do that, we become miracle workers for ourselves and for other people as well. So let's just take a moment while I bless us. So turn within with me. We turn within to find the source of everything. You know, there's a saying that God will be to us what we are to God. Life will be to us what we are to life. That as within, so without. So most of our spiritual practice and journey is to learn how to tap into the inside so that we can live it and express it rather than trying to get it from the outside. Because I don't know about you, but I've never been very successful at getting what I needed from the outside, whether it's love or peace or wisdom or joy or happiness. It's from the inside. And so as we turn within together tonight, I bless our time knowing that we are connected through the power of love. We are connected through the infinite source of all that there is. We are connected through the intelligence and wisdom and beauty that is the life that I call God. And so it is from that place that I know we are connected, because God is a whole. God is not fragmented. God is not a diverse. God is not broken into pieces. It is a whole. And so you and I have the fullness of divinity within us. And it's that golden thread that connects us to all beings, all animals, all plants, all galaxies, all aliens, everyone. We are connected. We live in a universe. And so I bless our time together, calling it good in advance, knowing that it is whole and perfect, as are you. And we proceed from there, allowing it to be. and so it is. Amen. Amen. So, I have really begun this spiritual perspectives because it's really all it is. We each have our own perspectives, which comprise our points of view, the way we look at the world, the way we look at life. Those perspectives, until we examine them until we examine them personally, Socrates said, know thyself. So until we examine those perspectives, they arise out of our childhood, our upbringing, our domestication, our indoctrination into life. And some perspectives, some ways of thinking lead to peace, and some ways of thinking lead to war. Some ways of thinking lead to happiness, and some ways of thinking lead to suffering. But the idea here, the biggest idea I can give you is that we are raised into thinking that the world is solid, real matter, and that we're trying to adjust to it. And the truth is that suffering or happiness, war or peace do not exist in the world. They exist as our perception of the world. And then our perception forms the world. So it is a vicious cycle. If we hold a perspective of war or against war, then our perspective creates more war. So we are always tasked in our quest to be metaphysicians, in our quest to be modern day mystics. We are tasked with changing the way that we think, changing the way that we see. So we're going to do that again tonight. Hi, David. I see you. So we're going to do that again tonight. Last week we did it with Batman. Tonight we're going to do it with Cinderella. And my source of inspiration for this evening is Marianne Williamson's beautiful book entitled Everyday Grace. And if you have not read this book, it's really, I love everything about it. I love Everyday Grace points to that we are wanting to bring spirituality and mysticism down to a practical level. I love some of her quotes, and she has many beautiful quotes that I'm going to share with you tonight. She says, we wish to cultivate the sacred in the midst of the great and small difficulties of our daily existence. Because really, right, life cannot be that life is hard and then you die. It cannot be that the old Christian way of viewing life as suffering is noble, and the more suffering you do, the better your afterlife will be. I remember in my ministry in North Carolina, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago, I was asked every year to go teach at a school of Christianity for young people in their religions class. So they would bring in different religions in order to educate their students. And I remember one time teaching at this class, and the students say, well, what is your source? What is your source? And it's like, well, we have so many sources. We have Bibles, we have the Quran, we have many metaphysical teachers. We have Meister Eckhart, Christian mystics. But there was always this underlying, I thought that maybe I could get into the good graces if I like Joel Osteen. So I was like, I brought that up one time, and it turns out that they didn't like him either, because he was very much more like New Thought than he was like conservative Christians, in that he believes that positive thinking leads to an abundant life. So the point being that we want to have our spirituality and our mysticism serve us. Marianne says, we want spiritual principles to be more than beautiful abstractions. We want them to actually transform our lives. Now, I know that you share with me in most ways that I am a practical metaphysician, meaning I don't want my study, my practice, my relationship to God to not result in the upliftment of myself and others. I want to feel it every day in my happiness levels, my health. I want to feel it in my pocketbook. I want to feel it in my creativity. I want to know that my relationship with all that is as creative as every flower and sunset. So we actually want our work to transform life itself. We want our work to end suffering and war. We want our work to end mass murders in the US. Marianne says the seeker in us is always seeking more truth, knowing that the search goes on forever, right? We're never not seekers. But the mystic in us, on the other hand, is trying to practice what we learned of it right here and right now in our everyday challenges, big and small. So I like doing metaphysical interpretation of movies and of stories because they're applicable. You know, the story of Batman, if you didn't tune in last week, you can go back and see it. But the story of Batman becoming Batman is not a story, like, it's not out there. It's over here with us. The same with Cinderella, which we'll talk about tonight. The same with Seabiscuit, which I'll talk about next week. And we could talk about, I could go on and on and on about movies and stories, but I'm only going to do it for 3 weeks. But this is also not, it's not a unique story, because many authors and spiritual teachers have talked about our magic powers. You know, the Wizard of Oz, you had the Wicked Witch of the East and the Good Witch of the North. And what created the distinction between the two? What makes a good witch a good witch? And what makes a bad witch a bad witch? Question mark. In Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements, he talks about our word, and that in the way that we speak and the way that we talk to people and the way that we show up in life, we can either be a creator of white magic or we can be a creator of black magic. We can uplift or we can depress. We can uplift, we can depress. And I think that we have to decide what we're going to be. We have to decide, are we going to be a good witch or are we going to be a bad witch? Are we going to add to life or are we going to take away from life? So Marianne Williamson, in this book, she talks about reclaiming this idea of magic, because she essentially says we are magical beings living in a magical universe, and we have forgotten, or we were never told, and that we are surrounded by the possibility of transformation, the possibility of enlightenment, the possibility of miracles. You know, I was the other day, so some of you are watching this, you don't really know my story. I try hard not to live in the story, but you don't, I worked in the Unity Naples Church, and then I had to leave because of I had a stroke. And so I've been gone for 1.5 years, and I've totally recovered. You know, I am totally fine. But for me to be back at Unity Naples now is like a miracle. It's like magic. It's like, how could that have possibly happened? And in this book, Marianne Williamson talks about how important it is that we believe in magic, that we believe in miracles, and what's necessary for us to have them, what's necessary for us to demonstrate them. So I've loved the analogy she made to Cinderella here, which is actually going to ultimately be my point. But she says in here, she says, we do not need to wait for the world to become more mystical. The world is already mystical. Our problem is not that the world lacks magic. Our problem is that we don't believe in its magic. So if anything, as we study the science of mind, or we study unity, or we study Sufism, or we study Buddhism, or we study whatever, mystical Judaism, mystical Christianity, mystical Catholicism, all of these speak to exactly the same principle, which is that we are magical beings. We are made in the image and likeness of the infinite presence of God, that we have within us the power of God. We have within us the power to create miracles. And that God will be to us whatever we are to God. The world will be to us whatever we will be to the world. She says in the book, she says, you will know that to God you are everything when God is everything to you. Now, you can change the word. If God triggers you in any possible way, you can change that word to love. So if you will know that to love you are everything when love is everything for you. Because we cannot separate the world as it is from our perspective of the world. And every spiritual tradition, every spiritual teaching will tell you that in order to bring about a radical transformation in our experience requires that we turn away from the appearance and we turn towards truth. Because if you were to look at the world and think that that's all that there is, that we are stuck with that we're at the effect of that it would be pretty darn depressing, as it is for a lot of people. Because it does feel like we are victims of a world gone mad most of the time. I also love this quote from her book. She says, if you think you can't, you can't. If you think you can, you might. But if you think God can, then you are on your way to a life of spiritual triumph. So my favorite chapter in this book, so once you get past the acceptance of magic, so first we just have this, can we believe in possibility? Can we get past Fox News? Can we get past the politics? Can we get past being reactive to being responsive? Now, she goes from magic. She talks about, let's talk about the magic wand. She talks about how if you're a child, you're getting ready to go back to school, your mama's going to take you to the dollar store or to Target, and you're going to buy all the tools you need to be a good student. Right? You're going to buy pencils and pens and note paper and a binder, and you will go to school prepared to be the best student you could possibly be. She says the same as it is with us as miracle workers, that we need the tools in order to do the work of being miracle workers in the world. And the tool she calls our magic wand. And we know the fairy godmother, boom, magic, boom, happiness, Wizard of Oz, boom, there's no place like home. That in these archetypal stories, some people have magic. Some people have the capacity to bring magic. The point of this entire talk tonight and this entire book is that you and I have the power to be fairy godmothers. We have the power to be the good witch of the north, or of course the wicked witch of the east as well. There is I want to read her definition of the magic wand. Well, okay. Oh, yes. So she says our magic wand are the spiritual principles that we know and practice. So the spiritual principles we know and practice are the power of cause and effect, the principles of reciprocity, the principles of prosperity, the principles of the spiritual principles, done unto you as you believe, the spiritual principles that say that our attitude, our thoughts, our intentions go from us to creating a world that works for everyone. And so she says, I'm quoting her, she says, spiritual principles which we apply in every situation, thus the potential to transform any situation. The magic wand is a principle, an intention, a thought is negative. It creates ill will. It creates ill. It creates harm. It creates destruction. It creates hate. It creates fear. And by the way, we all have intention. We all have a magic wand. The question is, are we a good witch or a bad witch? She said, when focused thought is loving and enlightened, it creates miraculous breakthroughs. A mystical wand is the illumined power that emanates from the mind when it is married to the heart. A mystical wand is the illumined power that emanates from the mind when it is married to the heart. Another way of saying this is your magical power, your superpowers, your superhero powers, just like Bruce Wayne, just like the fairy godmother, emanate from us when our thoughts and God's thoughts are connected, when the love within us and the love of God are connected, when our ego has been set aside and our spirit has taken control, which is really the point of any mystical journey, is to come from the heart, is to find love. Now, in the chapter number 3 is called Thoughts of Judgment Block the Light. We've talked about this before in numerous ways, under numerous topics, that judgment is kind of the last holdout to your awakening. Because in God's world, you cannot be right and another person wrong. You cannot be good and another person bad or evil. That there is no chosen group of people in God's world. There are no chosen people. God loves everyone, saint and sinner alike. So there is no place for judgment in the development of who you are as a fairy godmother in the world, or a good witch of the north. So she says there is behind efficacy of your magic wand and the immutable truth that God can only do for you what God can do through you. So in this chapter, she explores how it isn't possible to have a closed, fearful heart and still receive the fullness of God's grace or God's blessing or God's light. She says, when our thoughts are thoughts of love, then we are aligned with and receive God's power. When our thoughts are judgmental, we are choosing to turn our back and get closed off from the power that empowers the magic wand. Now, this is the part I really loved about this. This is Cinderella. This is Marianne Williamson's metaphysical interpretation of the fairy godmother and Cinderella's interaction. So if you will remember, Cinderella was a very open-hearted, wonderful person living with her evil stepmother and her evil stepsisters, and they were not very nice people, and they caused Cinderella an enormous amount of suffering. Yes, that's the story of Cinderella. So Marianne Williamson in this chapter says, Cinderella's fairy godmother, and excuse my language here, I'm quoting. She says, Cinderella's fairy godmother did not say to Cinderella, that stepmother of yours is such a bitch, we'll just show her. So Marianne says that the fairy godmother could have never said those things or even thought those things and in any way retained her mystical power. She would have lost her power had she even had that thought that there was retribution to have against the stepmother. But then she goes on, but you might say the stepmother was so mean to Cinderella, and the stepsisters were almost as evil as she was. Doesn't the stepmother deserve to be judged? Now listen, this is such a great personal lesson for us. Doesn't the person who did wrong deserve to be judged? The mass murderer, the person you're mad at this week, whoever it might be that we think has done something wrong, but fairy godmother, don't they deserve to be judged? So Marion says, notice that the fairy godmother obviously registered the fact that something was out of line, that the stepmother was out of line, or she would have never stopped in the first place. So she showed up. The fairy godmother showed up when the going got tough for Cinderella. And we could look at this, we can look that does God show up for you when the going gets tough? Does a miracle show up for you? Does an angel appear for you? They have for me, right? But so we'll come to that part in a second. But the fairy godmother showed up. Obviously something was wrong. This evil stepmother was being evil, and fairy godmother thought Cinderella might need help, so she stopped by. So Marion says she thought the situation needed to be rectified, or she wouldn't have come, and she wouldn't have brought her wand with her. But the fairy godmother was too wise to take sides. The archetypal wicked stepmother lives in all of us as much as Cinderella. But the stepmother is not where we are bad, semicolon. She is where we are wounded, where we are divorced from our divinity. So the fairy godmother came to heal the situation, not to condemn it. This is critical when you are in conflicted situations. We did a couple of weeks ago, we did a whole session on the spiritual perspective of conflict. How do we heal conflict? Well, this is another one of those stories that the fairy godmother comes to heal, not to condemn, not to judge, not to kill off the bad people. There are no good people and bad people. There's only people who are aware of the love that they are, and there are people who are not aware of the love that they are. And then we come to Cinderella herself. So Cinderella's refusal to surrender to the thoughts of retribution is part of what drew the fairy godmother to her in the first place. Love can summon the powers, hate can summon the powers of the world, but only love can summon the powers of God. So what Marianne is saying here, the perspective is that your purity, your willingness to stand on the side of love and forgiveness, your willingness to not condemn, draws unto you the miracle of the fairy godmother. It draws unto you the reconciliation. It draws unto you the raising of the phoenix. It calls unto you the healing. That if you were sitting in prayer, praying for your evil stepmother to die, to lose, to falter. I talked about this song last week, this Andy Williams song, where he writes this song about, I can't wait until somebody treats you as badly as you treated me. And in that consciousness, there is no salvation. There is no healing. There is no magic. There is no magical wand. So she says it takes tremendous faith in the power of love to refuse to hate those who behave in hateful ways, but therein lies our grace. I'm going to read that again. I did do this. It takes tremendous faith in the power of love to refuse to hate those who behave in hateful ways. In that refusal lies our grace. Now remember, this book is called Everyday Grace. It's how do we live in a world that's run by the ego? How do we live in a world that's got testimony after testimony after testimony of fear, of violence, of war, of abuse, of neglect? How do we live in that world without wanting an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth? How do we live in that world? Marianne Williamson is suggesting to us that we live in that world by standing in faith. She calls that world, by the way, the fallen realm, that we have so much of humanity has fallen from grace, meaning fallen out of the awareness of their true identity, their awareness of their connection to unconditional love, their awareness to the magic that lives within them, their lack of awareness of their magical, mystical self. And that's what we're here to do. We are here to do it. And why? Because it's practical, because it makes sense. Why would we want to continue to perpetuate the very things we're griping about, right? So the story here is Cinderella was unhappy. She was suffering, though she wasn't evil or bad. She wasn't hoping her stepmother fell off a cliff. She was staying connected. She was staying prayerful. She was living her life. And all of a sudden, a miracle came in the form of a fairy godmother that said, oh, let's lift the situation in love. Love lifts love. Whenever two or more are gathered in love, love can happen. Miracles can happen. So she says people deserve love, not because of what they do, but because of who they are. And who they are is not, Irish or English. Who they are is not black or white. Who they are is not gay or straight. Who they are is not the saint or the sinner. Who they are, who every single person is a unique and individualized expression of God. So this work for you, the work for you and I, because if we don't apply it, if we don't apply it, it's what use is it? It takes us back to this quote. The seeker in us is always seeking truth. The mystic in us, on the other hand, is trying to practice what we learned of it right here and now. So right where you are in your life, like, who are you mad at? Who do you think might deserve judgment and punishment? Right? Who are you in disagreement with? And you might see where this is upsetting for you. When you read the news and you feel upset with someone, like they deserve to be punished, they deserve to suffer for what they've done, you might want to rethink your perspective on that. Because the lesson here, as well as a lesson in The Wizard of Oz, as well as a lesson in Batman, really every uplifting hero and heroine story, is that we bring to the table something that transmutes the situation from bad to good, from hate to love, from fear to faith. That's our charge as seekers and our charge as emerging mystics. And emerge we must. We must emerge. Now, so that is the lesson. That is the lesson for today. The lesson of the magical, of the wand, the power, it's your toolkit. Your toolkit in life is to remember love. It is your magic wand. It is your spiritual toolkit, is to remember principles. Principle before personality. Practice, not perfection. But to remember to do your inner work, because your inner work is the only work that's important ever for you or for the whole world. I love her, one of her final quotes in this chapter. She says, Jesus did not say love each other, but only under certain circumstances. Jesus said love each other, because only through this love Can we heal? Remember earlier she's talked about that the part of us that is the evil stepmother, the part that would be cranky or bitchy or mean or revengeful or conniving or narcissistic, the part of us, that's not who we really are. That part of us is the part that's wounded, not evil. And that part of us is a part that needs to be healed, but it cannot be healed through attack or retribution. It can only be healed through love. So if you love somebody who's mean, even though they're mean, there's some chance of redemption there. If you don't, there's no chance. So the whole world's sitting on this precipice, waiting a little bit for us to find our way. So that is our lesson today. That is our spiritual perspective on Marianne Williamson's beautiful book, Everyday Grace. Actually, just the first 3 chapters, but this I kind of fell in love with this whole fairy godmother and Cinderella relationship, and why she called forth her fairy godmother, and why the fairy godmother came, and why the story ended up so beautifully, because everybody wanted it to. There was nobody wanting it to be bad for anyone. So that's our story. That's our lesson for today. So let's see. I'm doing Sunday Talk at Unity Naples this coming Sunday. So first of all, if you live in Florida, come 10 o'clock, 9:30 meditation, 10 o'clock the service starts. So come in person. Amy and Jesse are our musical team. They're absolutely they're fantastic. So I promise you the drive will be worth it. If you don't live here, you can stream online and say hello in that way. I haven't actually done a talk here for 1.5 years. So it's my first talk after leaving and then coming back. If you want to visit my Facebook page, is A Life of Spiritual Power. And if you have trouble commenting on this page, you should come to Sunday Night of Life through the Facebook page. My website is deniseschubert.com. You can go there for past blogs, for past trips to Africa, for photographs, and you can also go there if you're fed by Sunday Night of Life and you want to donate to my ministry. I happily accept your donations. It actually inspires me, keeps me coming back as well. You can also do that through PayPal, Zelle, or Venmo to revdschubert@gmail.com. And finally, if you would like some spiritual counsel or a spiritual life coach, if you want to talk through some of these principles, if you need to get over a hump, please, I love working with people. It's my favorite things to do. You can reach me through my website or also at revdschubert@gmail.com. So that is our lesson for today. I'm going to pray us out and speak my word for and about you. I love affirmative prayer because we're not begging. So keep in mind that God doesn't need us to be grateful to him or her or it. God doesn't need our gratitude. God doesn't need our worship. God doesn't need really even very much from us. God needs us to open our hearts and to align ourselves with the good that's always being given. So when we pray, it's a little different than our childhood prayers, at least it is in my world, where we were taught to really beg God for to help us or to fix something or to smite our enemy. No, we don't smite our enemies here. We are pray to align our thoughts with God's thoughts. We're here to align our heart with God's heart. We're here to release everything we're not so that we can embrace everything that we truly are. So that's what we're doing right now. So join with me as we turn within, ending our time together the same way that we started it, which is to recognize that everything we want is within us. Everything we need is within us. Our beauty, our wisdom, our passion, our power, our happiness, our peace of mind, everything is from within us. we're not going to get it from the world. You cannot live from the outside in. We need to live and express from the inside out. And so as we turn within together, we come together in the name and the nature of unconditional love. We come together connected by the golden thread that connects all life. We live in a field of unity and oneness. We live in a field that is not diverse. It's a universe. It's a connected universe. All animals, all plants, all people, everything, all aliens, we are one. And so it is from that place that I recognize we live through and by spiritual principles. We live through physical principles. We live through the principle of gravity. We live through the principle of cause and effect. We live through the principle of love. We live through the principle of thermodynamics. So it is the principle that we are connected and that our word is a power that I speak for and about each and every one of us in this moment. Claiming your mystical self, claiming that you are affirming and claiming and pronouncing that you are a good witch, that you are a lifter of life, not a depressor of life, that you are a lover of life, not afraid of life. And that when we leave this time together tonight, you leave with your magic wand, and that every situation that needs your love, you are able to go in and ding, and actually bestow upon whoever is in need of it blessings and the grace of God. That's our role in life, is to be miracle workers. And so I accept that we are able to drop an ancient any ancient or newly formed resentment or unforgiveness, that we see the problem for what it is, which is simply the absence of love, the wounded parts of ourselves, and we just pour love all over it. And I know that in doing so, we do indeed contribute to the life on this planet for all. And so I'm grateful. I'm grateful to speak this word for and about us. I'm grateful to know a truth that leads to more happiness than any relative or temporary truth. God is, we are. And in that lies our salvation, our resurrection, and our love and peace and happiness on this earth. And so for this and so much more than my words can say, I'm grateful. We let this time be together by saying, and so it is. Amen. All right, amen. Next week, we're going to go back to Seabiscuit for just a moment or two before we move on. So I will send out an announcement, but if I don't see you before on Sunday, I will see you for the broadcast at Naples. I will see you next Sunday night on Sunday Night Alive, Spiritual Perspectives. So peace and blessings. Have a wonderful evening.